had such an amazing reading month in the month of October. I read so many good books and so many books. It was actually one of my highest reading months of the year, which is great because October is literally my favorite month of the year. So let's just kick off with exactly how I did and some stats in the month of October. I managed to read 16 books, which is absolutely insane. I did DNF 3 books. I'm okay with this because it means that I was able to get in more books that I loved. I managed to read over 8,000 pages, which is insanity, and 63 hours of audiobooks. I tried to do a little bit more like listening while reading, prioritizing ebooks kind of thing in the month of October, and I think that went really well for me. My average rating was a 3.52, which again, for me, pretty darn good. I typically give more on the 3-star range, so a 3.5 star, not bad at all. Unfortunately for me though, I did start 9 series and I didn't finish any of them, so whoopsie. Now let's jump into all of the books that I read in October. Starting with some horror, I read The Reformatory. This is a book that I've been meaning to get to for so long, an author that I've been meaning to get to for so long. It's mostly about 2 siblings in Florida in the 1950s. Robbie kicks the largest landowner's son for hitting on his sister, and because of this, he is sentenced to the Reformatory, which is a school for boys. This place is awful. They do a lot of really bad things to these children in order to get them to do what they want. It's basically a prison for young boys, and there are rumors that there are ghosts hanging around. This is a really, really good read. It does everything that it sets out to do. It is a very hard read, so definitely check trigger warnings if this is something that you're interested in picking up. If you like a historical read and you want to know more about the inner workings and the lives and how things are affecting people, then you will absolutely love this. If you are more into leaning into the horror and the ghost side of things, this may not quite be for you. I can appreciate everything Tana Nareevdu was trying to do in this book, and I think she did it beautifully. It was gut-wrenching. It was gorgeously written. I did land a little bit more on the wanting more of the like supernatural horror elements, and while I think that the rest of it was extremely important and definitely needed to be there, that's just what I tend to look for when I'm looking for books, is more of the horror elements. I do think this book was incredibly written, and I would highly, highly recommend it as long as you check trigger warnings first. Then one of the books that I DNF'd was The Wraith King by Juliet Cross. I wanted to love this. The cover is gorgeous. Like, look at this cover. It's so pretty, but it just really did not work for me. This is supposed to be a gothic enemies to lovers romantasy, but it just seemed to miss all of the points that I was hoping that it would make. The plot never really picked up. I was promised politics, and those seemed to really fall flat. The characters had no dimension, and their chemistry between one another really wasn't working for me. When I got to the first sex scene, I was like, nope, I'm tapping out. This is not the book for me. So I did put it down around 30-35%, I think. I can't remember exactly when I decided to DNF this one. Then one that has been buzzing around so much recently is Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen. This is an author duo. I picked this up because Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy and Claire from Claire's Neverland of Books were both buddy reading this and flew through the series hyping it up, so I absolutely wanted to get to it as well. This one is following Rosalina, and she is kind of on the outs of her family. Her dad is very eccentric because he believes that her mother was taken by fairies, and it's been his life's mission to try to get back into fairy and rescue her mother. One day he turns up missing, and when she goes to look for him, she stumbles into the world of fairy as well. She trades her life for her father's imprisonment and ends up in the hands of 4 fae princes. This is so much fun. It is a reverse harem. It's very fairy tale-esque, Beauty and the Beast type retelling, and I ate up every bit of it. I loved this first book so much. It just had all of the right vibes that I needed in the moment. The reverse harem aspect I think is done really, really well. There are a lot of interpersonal relationships, and I think those are explored in a really fun way. All of the guys have a very unique personality, which makes them a lot easier to distinguish than I find typically in reverse harem. Sometimes all of the guys sound the same and you're like, wait, who the heck is even talking right now? And I love all of their different relationships with her and how they're coming to terms with all of that. So I think that this book does that extremely well. There's also a plot of trying to save fairy and break a curse, and I just think that it is a great read if you're looking for all of those fairy tale vibes. And even if you're not, honestly, I'm not usually a fairy tale kind of gal, I would still recommend picking this one up. Next up, we have another horror, which was Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. I've actually read a book by this author before, the Burn the Negative, and I liked it but did not absolutely love the direction that it went in, so I was hoping that this one would work a little bit better for me. It's basically an adult summer camp for people that have fallen victim to cancel culture for some reason or another. We have a girl that is part of a sitcom. When she makes a tweet that she really shouldn't have posted, people start to come for her show gets canceled, and so she just wants to get away and decides to go to this camp. But there is a legend going around about a girl named Nancy that had her head cut off, and she is looking for it. If you tell her you don't know where it is, she's gonna take yours. I think that this book explores sexuality really, really well. It definitely has some great horror elements that I was like, ooh, yes. But overall, a lot of it felt a little bit too slow for me in the beginning. It was a lot more slice of life, getting to know the characters, and the horror elements definitely come in the second half. So while I did really enjoy it, it's not one that I was like, oh my goodness, yes. I ended up giving this one a low 4-star, and I think I would definitely recommend it. It's just know that it has a bit of a slower start. Next up was one that I was so excited for, and I read for the Indie Archive, which is the book club that Cassidy and I host over on our Patreons, and that is So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. Rachel Harrison books just have that quirky horror style that tends to work so well. They tend to be not literary, but always approaching pretty heavier topics while also giving you a quirky horror spin, which is really, really hard to do. This one did not hit as well as I wanted it to. This is following Sloane, and Sloane is getting older. She has another birthday, and she doesn't want to get older. She feels like her life is crumbling around her. When she goes with her best friend to a resort, they meet a guy and decide to go over to his house and realize that there is a lot more going on than they thought, and these people might just be vampires. I think that this one just missed the mark for me a lot in the relationships between the characters. I did not like the two friends. Their relationship was beyond toxic, and not in a way that was fun to read about. It was just toxic and very repetitive. The same conversations were happening over and over again. Sloane was griping about the same things over and over again. Some of the motivations in this didn't make sense. The horror elements I definitely enjoyed. I thought they were fun and campy, but I just ended up feeling like this book was dragging more than I was having fun with it, so I ended up giving this a 3-star. Then we have The House at Watch Hill. This is Cara Marie Moning's brand new book, which I was so incredibly excited for because I love the Dark Fever series. This one I enjoyed, but probably fell a little bit prey to the hype of how much I love the Dark Fever series. This one is about Zoe, and Zoe has just recently lost her mother. She is trying to figure out what she's going to do and how she's going to move on with her life when she gets a call that she is the only heir to a mansion on Watch Hill. And in order to acquire this mansion and all of the money that comes along with it, she has to live there for a month before she can get everything. Come to find out, there's a little bit more to this town than she originally thought, and it might involve witches. I liked this book. I definitely preferred the second half. The second half was more like a 4-star, really enjoyed. The first half was like a 3-star. It was kind of dragging. The first half I just felt like Zoe wasn't really questioning anything. She was just like, oh, all these really cool things are happening. I wonder why. And I'm like, okay, well, I need you to actually ask what the heck is going on here. And she just wasn't doing that. It also just felt like it was moving really slow in how long it was taking to get to the point, get to the explanations. But once we kind of got to that, we found out what she was, we found out how everything was coming together. I did really enjoy the second half and really liked the ending of this. I think it's going to set up for a really cool book in the future. So I definitely will be continuing on, but I ended up giving this one a 3.5. I just kind of met in the middle between the first and the second halves. Sorry if the lighting is changing a little bit. It is really gloomy today and the sun just keeps going in and out behind clouds and driving me nuts. I forgot to mention that I also read Woven by Gold this month as well. I am excited to continue on in this series. I liked the second book a lot. I gave it a 4-star. I'm trying to decide. I don't think I liked it quite as well as book 1, but I think a lot of that was to do with the length and the character that it was focusing on. Once you kind of get through that first book, there's going to be a book devoted to each character, and a little bit in the first book as well. And Farron just is not my favorite guy. He's a little too sweet and cupcakey for me, and I think that was the main reason why I liked it slightly less. I still really liked it. I like that the plot is moving forward. I like that we're getting some answers, but I just didn't love him as much. So if you love him as a character, I think you will also really enjoy book 2. I also picked up the viral sensation Phantasma that everyone seems like it's reading lately. Left, right, and center, I pull up TikTok, I pull up YouTube, and somebody is reading this book. I didn't love it, unfortunately. I was so ready to fall in love with this book. I saw so many 4 and 5-star reviews. I think I'm gonna give it a lower 3-star. There are a lot of things that this book does extremely well that I enjoyed, but for the most part, the relationship did not work for me. This is following Ophelia mainly, and her mother has just recently died, and she now has to become become the head of the family. It's something she knew she was always going to have to do. Her sister got to go off, do whatever she wanted, but she is going to have to be the one to kind of suck it up and get things done. She ends up taking the mantle, and they find out that their home is about to be taken over. And so her sister whisked away, said she's going to fix the problem for a change, and Ophelia has to go after her because she thinks that she has entered the world of Phantasma. Phantasma is basically kind of like a creepy carnival, and once you enter, there is a prize that you are trying to get toward, but people tend to die along the way. She gets help from a mysterious man, and he says that if she will bind herself to him and help him find a key, he will help her survive the trials. The main thing, like I said, that I didn't love about this book was the relationship. It was just too wham bam, thank you ma'am, and it moved extremely fast. I felt like the sex scenes were so random. The chemistry happened out of nowhere. Well, what little chemistry there was. And I just didn't love that to this. And with it being a romantasy, that made me struggle. I do think the trials were really cool. I thought that the world of Phantasma was a lot of fun. I just needed a little bit more from the relationship side of things. And the ending to me felt really rushed and a little bit of a cop-out. Like, I saw it coming and I kind of wish I hadn't, because it just wasn't my favorite way for it to end, and it just felt rushed. So in the end, I think I'm giving this one a 3-star. I know a lot of people love the Caraval series, and I've heard this compared to that a lot. So if you do like that series by Stephanie Garber, maybe try this one. I haven't read it, so I can't personally speak for that. Next up, another book that I DNF'd is Court of Nightmares. This one I tried to read with Claire and Cassidy as well, and it just didn't really work for any of us, I don't think. For me personally, I just like for my books to have a little bit more substance to them than just sex and sex for sex's sake. Wow, that was really hard to say. Try saying that 3 times fast. But I liked the beginning of this one, actually. We're in a world of vampires, and our female main character gets mated to the king of the vampires. He shuns her, and because of this, she kind of goes crazy, and she gets taken by a court of vampires, the Court of Nightmares, and they're pretty much responsible for making sure that humans don't find out about the vampires, and if you do something that's against their code, they will kill you, and she joins their court. So that part, really, really interesting. But then we get to the court part where she's with all of these men, and it just wasn't really working for me. And then Cassidy read a little bit further, Claire had read a little bit further from me, and both of them just encouraged me to put it down, and so I decided to listen to them. This cover is gorgeous. This edition is stunning. It's gonna sit on my shelves as a trophy book for a little while, but I don't think I'll be picking it back up again. Moving on to our next book is The Hallowed Games by C.N. Crawford. This is the bookish box edition as well. It was the month of trials for me. Honestly, this book also has trials, and it is a trope that I really enjoy, so I'm not mad about it. This one is basically, it reminds me a lot of the Heartless Hunter and kind of the setup to this one, where witches are feared, people don't want anything to do with them, and we have essentially this like church that is tasked with killing off anyone that's been accused of witchcraft. Elowen can kill with her touch, and so she is basically this like town's mayor's assassin for trying to kill all of the witch hunters that may suspect someone in their town. She unfortunately gets caught by the leader of the witch hunters, and there is a lot more to him than meets the eye because she is able to touch him without him dying, so she's not able to get away. In order to survive, she is offered a spot in deadly trials, and there is only one person that is able to win and be chosen to have forgiveness by the god, and if she wins, then she gets that chance. I loved the trials aspect to this. I thought that it was so much fun and so good. Much like Phantasma though, the relationship is where it lost it a little bit for me. The spicy scenes were done in kind of an odd way, which I wasn't a huge fan of, and I did feel like they kind of got a little bit too I'll love you, I'd do anything for you a little too quickly, like there wasn't enough lead up to me for that. But I still enjoyed this book overall, and I liked C.N. Crawford's writing style, which is good because I've DNF'd a book from her before, so I'm glad to know that I do still like her writing and would want to read more from her in the future. So I will be continuing on in the series and picking up more books from this author. I think I just forgot to mark some books as DNF because I found another one that I didn't finish, which is The House of Gilded Nightmares. This one was a romantasy that was gifted to me by Clementine, so thank you so much to Clementine, but unfortunately it just did not hit the mark for me. It felt a little too tropey, a little too, I don't know, I've read this a million times before kind of situation, and there was a lot of travel. So while I don't think it was bad, I think I would give it a 3-star. I just decided that I didn't really want to continue because it was just going to be a mediocre book. Next up we have The Eyes Are the Best Part. I actually don't know what I did with this book. I think I left it somewhere in my bedroom, so we're just gonna pretend that I'm holding up the cover. This one's about a young girl and her father has just decided to up and leave and kind of left their family in shambles, and her mom finds a new white man that she is interested in marrying and thinks is going to take care of her and love her. He's kind of awful actually, and our main character starts to fantasize about killing him and eating his eyeballs. So it's definitely a ride. I did not like the first half of this book at all. It just felt so literary to me and it was dragging. But when we got into the second half, things did start to pick up. Things got creepier. I started to understand a little bit more about what the author was trying to do with our main character and kind of that descent that she was making. I still think that it could have been done a little bit better and paced a little bit better, but as a horror, if you like a more literary leaning horror, then try this one. But if you are somebody that just needs your horror to be horror, then this is not going to be the book for you. I ended up giving it a higher 3-star because I could appreciate what the author was doing. I could appreciate what it was trying to say, but unfortunately it just didn't really work for me as a whole. Next up we have Nocticadia by Carrie Lake. This is my first book that I've ever read by her. I needed a book with ghost, and unfortunately the synopsis lied to me and this book did not have any ghost. I did enjoy it for the most part. Apparently I just read a lot of books about our main character's parents dying because she witnesses her mother's death with basically these like worm looking things coming out of her, and everyone tells her that she imagined it. She must be going crazy because that's not what the autopsy report says. She's just trying to make ends meet and keep her sister in this prestigious school when she writes a paper about a parasite and uses her mother's case as inspiration because she thinks it's all made up. She gets an offer to a very elite private school off the coast of Maine, and she meets a very strange professor there. This main job is researching the parasite that killed her mother. The beginning of this, 5 stars. It was so creepy, had a lot of horror elements to it honestly, and I was vibing. Then we got to more the middle, like the 30% middle mark where she was just going to school and we were learning about the school and I was like, I don't care about this. Then we got to the more relationship side of things and it went really contemporary, like dark romance, and I was like, yeah, this is fine, but I want to know more about the parasite and the ghost because they're supposed to be like mental patients that were killed here in the school and we're not really getting any of that. And then we got to the end and the last 20% like zoomed by and was really, really good, but went way too fast. So I was like, okay, the whole middle drug. The ending was way too quickly, so the pacing just wasn't great for me. It was also a lot more contemporary than I was expecting it to be, and I'm not a really big contemporary reader. So if you like contemporary or dark romance, I do think you might like this one better than I did. I ended up giving it a 3.5. Like, it was good, but it wasn't amazing. But I will be reading more from this author in the future. I think she writes beautifully. I just think she's a bit long-winded. Next up, I read The Wren in the Holly Library by K.A. Lindy. This one surprised me. I honestly wasn't expecting to just love this one, but I ended up really enjoying it. This is the Fairyloot Romantasy edition, which is absolutely gorgeous. I think Fairyloot does such an amazing job with their Romantasy editions. And it's about Kierce, who is a thief. She can pretty much lift anything, get into anything. When she's given a job to go into this guy's house and steal something from his library, come to find out he's a monster. And this world is basically post-apocalyptic where the monsters came in, they were killing all of the humans, they made a treaty with the humans so that everybody can get along, but things are still not great. And I just thought that this was fun. There was a heist element to it, the romance was good. It wasn't my absolute favorite, it didn't quite have enough banter for me, but I do think it was good. The story was very fast-paced for the most part, and I just enjoyed it. The writing was a little bit YA, and when I say that, I mostly just mean that it was a little over-explanatory where we were getting kind of something the character did and then the author would tell us what it was kind of situation. Kierce also read a little bit younger to me, and the fact that she was very fly by the seat of her pants, very headstrong like a lot of teen characters tend to be, and that's just a trope, a character type, but I still really enjoyed it. I think that if you are somebody that's trying to get from young adult into more of an adult, this one's going to meet right in the middle and be a great sweet spot for you. Then I read The Gods Below by Andrea Stewart. This is a fantasy book. Look at me go, reading an epic fantasy book about 2 siblings and a world where the gods essentially wiped everything out. The humans were terrible. They went to war. One of the gods said that he was going to help protect and save humanity, and in order to do that, he has to do something called a restoration, which basically wipes out most of the population except for a few whenever it comes through a town. But the few that survive get like transformed in some way and can become god killers. spoilers. I just wanted this book to do a little bit more for me. I liked the magic, and I liked kind of the Eska type magic where they would swallow something and then gain powers from that. But the revenge revolution type plotline to this, the sisterly revenge, the sisterly relationships that I was so looking forward to, unfortunately didn't hit quite as well as I wanted it to. This book also felt kind of slow in parts, and I think what I was looking for out of this was Andrea Stewart's really, really cool world building, and while I think that she kind of skimmed the surface of one, it never really hit home quite as well as I wanted it to. It never delved in deep enough to the characters, deep enough to the magic, deep enough to the backstory in order for me to care. There were several points of views that weren't the two sisters that I just felt like could have been done differently. They just didn't blend into the story as well as I wanted them to be. They were too few and far between, but also too often all at the same time. So I just did not love the way that those meshed together. I don't know that I'll be continuing on in the series, but if somebody were to tell me that the second book is amazing, 10 out of 10, I would pick it up. I also managed to pick up The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. This is one I was really excited about because I enjoyed her other series, The Chorus of Dragons. This is a standalone, which you guys know is not my favorite thing. We have Anna Rod, and she was banished years ago for being accused of stealing one of the main dragon's hoards, and she has been on the run ever since when she is caught and taken by a group of people that need her help, basically trying to do what she was accused of before. And so there is a heist element to this. It was a lot of fun. It was actually fast-paced to the point of being too fast-paced, where I felt like we were moving from scene to scene to scene, and it wasn't slowing down enough for me to appreciate the world building, appreciate the story, and get the depth that I wanted. I did like the characters in here. There's some found family aspects to this. It is LGBTQ+, which I really enjoyed about it as well. I thought she brought in some great, like, familiar tropes about dragons while also putting her own unique spin on it. The heist was a lot of fun. I just needed things to be slowed down a little bit and given me more depth into everything, and it really, really needed to be a duology, which I say a lot, but unfortunately it just did. It needed to be a duology. It was too fast. This is a romantasy that came out in October, actually, so look at me go. It was part of my NetGalley Read or Rejected series, which I will leave up here for you guys to check out. That was the first episode, and it actually went really, really well, except for this book. I did end up giving this book a 2-star. It didn't work. You can watch my video if you want to see the full rant on this. I'm not going to give it here because we would be here for a very long time, and we've already been here for a very long time. But basically, this is about a girl. She's a witch, and witches can only have control of one element, but she's a super special snowflake and actually is able to control all of the elements because she looks like this fae queen that died a bunch of years ago. When this guy named Xander washes up on the beach, and he offers to help her because he needs her in order to take back his throne. It's very convoluted. It's kind of messy. The whole thing feels a little convoluted and messy, especially in the beginning. They have no chemistry between one another. Scenes move way too fast. The writing was not my favorite. Once we got into the second half, I did like Oberon and kind of that character development a little bit better, and I feel like we slowed down some and got a little bit more explanation to things, but as a general rule, this book was not it for me, and so it ended up getting a 2-star. And the very last book of the month to talk about is Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. This was very, very scary, and the last book that I picked out of my jar for the NetGalley Read or Rejected. This is a horror book by an author that I have both loved and disliked in the past. The synopsis of this on Goodreads and on the back of the book is not very good, in my personal opinion. It leads you to believe we are following Wilder in a present tense where he is writing a book about his childhood and slowly descending into madness surrounding it. It's not really what this is about. We're mostly following Wilder as a teenager when he is on vacation on a seaside in Maine, and he's with his friends. He's trying to learn more about being a friend and just a lot of coming of age stuff. But then one day they find a body and realize that it is part of a serial killer plot, and things kind of unravel from there. I think that Catriona Ward did a very good job with the ending of this book, wrapping up all of her ties and really giving a psychological aspect to this, but I would not necessarily call this book a horror book. It is more of like a psychological literary type story. And again, I think she did what she did very, very well, but the beginning was extremely slow. I think originally I said I was going to round this up to a 4-star, but honestly, the more I think about it and the more I talk about it, I kind of want to round it down, put it at a 3.5 and go down to a 3 instead of up to a 4, because it did what it did well. I think the ending was very good. I think the ending wrapped things up, gave you some really good twists that I didn't see coming, but it doesn't mitigate the rest of the book being kind of dull, in my opinion. So if you are somebody that likes likes a coming of age story and you don't mind the horror elements being very subtle, you want a really good ending, a twisty ending, and you like a psychological horror, then I would say try this one. But I don't think that it's going to work for those people that don't want their horror to be a little slower, more methodical, more literary. It did remind me, like, I can see how this is the same author that wrote The Last House on Needless Street, but I did much prefer that one. I felt like it was paced a lot better in my opinion, but I can see her like fever dream writing style in this. Those are all of the books that I read in October. We've been here for so long, I apologize. But I read a lot of things that I wanted to yap to you guys about. Thank you so much for hanging out. If you actually managed to stay for the entirety of this video, I appreciate you. And leave me a snake emoji for Hollowed Games. I will leave my most recent vlog up here for you guys to check out, which is the first episode in my Read or Rejected, where I try to read down my NetGalley list in order to have a better chance of getting books approved instead of rejected. Thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!